Andy Groves says there are so many people working so hard and achieving so little. And that's the lack of correlation between inputs and outcomes.
Yeah. I think the vast majority of business owners, I come from the business perspective, but the vast majority of business owners work a fair amount. They just work on the wrong stuff and they do it the wrong way. And so they get so little for their effort that they wonder when they're at home empty-handed in bed, why isn't this working when I am working? But if you define work, at least the way I do, which is output. So I define work by output. And in order to get output, it's volume times leverage. So how many times you do the thing times how much you get for each time you do it. And so that is do you work smart or do you work hard? It's you do both. You do as many reps as you possibly can, and you do it with the most leverage possible. So if I make 100 phone calls, the leverage that I can have there would be how skilled I am. So if I make 100 calls, I might get 10 times more. And so I worked more. I had more output than somebody who has less skill. But the only way you get skilled is by doing more inputs, by working more. And so it's this virtuous cycle of doing more and getting better, and then you get more for what you do.
Yeah. Magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding all the time. Every single time that we're not making progress in this way, what is the highest pain task that's in front of me that I've put off the most? It's always that one. Bad things don't come in threes. Bad things happen. People don't know how to cope, and they allow one bad thing to snowball into more. Bad stuff sucks. The only thing worse is letting one bad thing ruin many good things.
I'm glad you found that one. That was one on that list of things that, quotes I wish had gone more viral. The amount of, I think it happens more when you're younger, but, girlfriend breaks up with you. Okay. Then you go into work and you sulk because you're distracted, and then you don't do the same level of effort and you're not enthusiastic. And then all of a sudden your work suffers and you get put on a PIP or you get fired. And then now you're fired and you don't have a girlfriend, and then you start gaining weight and you stop going to the gym. And all of a sudden you're like, man, bad things happen in threes. It's like, no, bad things happen all the time, and they only become interrelated if you let it affect your behavior. And so I think the equal opposite of that is thinking, okay, this bad thing occurred. What can I do to decrease the likelihood something else bad occurs in the meantime? And then boiling everything down to activities or the actions that I have to take. And I think about that actually a lot, which is how, like, if you think about from the power perspective of, okay, something bad happens, how much will it affect my behavior? Well, the person who's indestructible would have something terrible happen and then nothing would change. Yeah, people don't know how to manage their emotions. I think the more, at least for me, the more I've tried to create space between how I feel and what I do, the more consistent my outcomes have been.
What do you mean?
So if I need to create content and I'm not feeling it, or I'm feeling tired, or things like that, the more times I give into that excuse or that feeling, then the more superstitious I become about doing it in the future. Whereas a lot of times if I can just start when I am tired or when something is painful and then still execute about the same as before, I look at game tape or I look at video or I look at the content from those sessions, for example, and I see that I remember feeling terrible during the session, but you can't really see anything. And I think the more times you get that loop going, the more you can separate how you feel and what is required. And the more times you do what is required to get what you want, the more times you get what you want.
I spoke to Huberman last year. I think it's called the anterior mid-singular cortex. Basically, there is an area of the brain that tracks when you do something that you don't want to do, and you strengthen the connections in it by doing things that you don't want to do, especially when you really don't want to do them. So you're hypertrophying. It's this exact sort of intuition that you've got that some people would call it resilience or willpower or whatever, but this is neurologically represented in the brain. These connections get stronger. So I think it's so funny. Gym bros will need a gym analogy in order to be able to believe that their brain changes. But it's really useful to think, hey, you're hypertrophying this area of your brain. I snapped an Achilles. I had to do a very particular series of rehab movements in order to grow it back. This is just the same.
Yeah. Agreed.
Successful people see opportunity in every failure. Normal people see failure in every opportunity. Both are right. Only one gets rich.
This has been something I've been thinking about a lot, which is basically the shittiness of stuff, which is when you're growing in a business, it's very painful. When you're stagnating in a business and you're plateaued and you don't know what to do, it's very painful. When you're declining and you also don't know what to do, it's very painful. And so that means that all conditions of reality are painful. And so if pain is a prerequisite for reality, then it means it's just a signal that we are alive.